Hi there, we are back once again. Oh, I am back twice apparently. A reminder to type exclamation mark and team name if you would like to find out more about the team that's being presented and their game as well. And yeah, make sure to use the hashtag ProtoPlay on Twitter. Share the live stream, make sure that your games are known, and yeah, let's get to it. Next on the list is the Fine Logic Studios, and I'm gonna be chatting to Jamie. Let's get right into it, shall we? Shall we? Hello.
Hello there, how you doing?
I'm doing amazing, how are you?
Yeah, great, thank you.
So, would you like to introduce yourself, your team, and your game? Let's go.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Jamie Lamb. I'm one of the main designers for Project Roman, and we were hoping to create a episodic, narrative-driven linear RPG set in South Wales during the Roman conquest of Britain and around the time of Boudicca's revolt in the east of England. We were planning on releasing 5 episodic installments and aiming for around 3 hours of playing time each. And Project Roman aims to adjust the elements of the story based around actions and choices of the player. The game kind of focuses around a Celt-born adopted daughter of a Roman centurion who is tasked by the spirits of Anon, the Celtic underworld, to bring the end of the war between the Romans and the Celts before a cataclysmic battle takes place. This is a prophesized battle which will cause much death, and once Anon will be unable to handle the massive fallen souls, causing the mortal realm and the underworld to collapse into each other. That's kind of the setting for our game.
Awesome. That was a huge drop of content right there.
Yeah.
Thank you. Right, let's take it back a notch. Let's roll back the tape, okay? You spoke about the theme of your game. Where did that come from? Where was the inspiration for that? If you could sort of touch on that a bit more. Well, why this theme and not the other? You know.
Because kind of Wales is very unrepresented kind of, it's kind of unrepresented geography within Britain, and we're all kind of from Wales, and we studied in the University of South Wales, so we kind of want to showcase its interesting history, especially in the Roman period, and because it's where we work, we were able to go to like historic sites and kind of view them and kind of like ingrain ourselves in the history.
Mm-hmm. I see. That's cool. Would you say what's the most similar game in that genre that you could say is like comparable to your game, so people have maybe even a clearer idea of what you're aiming for?
So we're kind of planning to make a game that is similar to maybe something like Uncharted or The Last of Us, or even kind of The Walking Dead, where basically it's kind of an action adventure, but it's more linear and narrative based.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of what sets us apart will be more of an RPG where players are able to make choices and it will actually affect the story later on.
I see. What I'm thinking quite unique for your game actually is the setting, because like you mentioned the Last of Us. The other game you mentioned, I forgot. I'm too focused on your game.
Sorry.
And I think the setting sets it apart quite a lot, because not only is you said it's Welsh history story, yeah.
Yeah. We wanted to. I think that this is kind of what sets our game apart. Is the fact that we want to take this, and we're kind of going towards the mythology route. So it's kind of looking into Welsh history and mythology, and we want to kind of like spark that interest inside. And we also just want to teach kind of players who don't really know about Welsh history, kind of about the area that we kind of set the game in, because it has a lot of history, especially within Roman and Celt sort of battles.
I see. That's awesome. It looks very interesting. I'm definitely curious for the lore, which is what you're aiming for, right?
Yeah.
Was the lore the most worked on aspect of the concept we are seeing on the game, or is there anything else that you are more proud of?
We were originally going to make this an open world, but we realized the scope was too large to begin with. So we decided to kind of scope it down, and the prototype we made was it was a more, we changed it to kind of more of a linear game, and we also just wanted to focus on a story between just two people to begin with for the prototype. So it's between Sequanus, who is a companion to the main character, Rowan. And we just kind of wanted to make it about their relationship to begin with, and then have their relationship have kind of a wider scope where they kind of talk about different sort of areas of wealth mythology. So when we go up to like these little stones, they kind of like talk about a little bit of the history of like the stone, and they kind of talk about the area a little bit more. And we also have a third character who is a kind of more of a grumpy, hard veteran of the Roman kind of legion. Which is more of a back and forth type character in our prototype.
I see. You mentioned the three characters. Are they sort of based on the classic Trinity when each one complements the other and they are together like a, they each have different characteristics,
Yeah, so Roan is kind of like a blank slate for the player. So she's kind of, she has her own history in the game. But she's kind of more of a slate for the player to inhabit. So she might talk about a bit about her previous history, especially during the prototype. But she kind of like is more of an inquisitive character who basically asks questions to Sequanus and Lucius, just so she can so the player can gain more information, kind of like a third party. Sequanus is another kind of Roman legionnaire who the player is who's the companion to the player, and he always has like a little back and forth banter with Rowan, the main character, and it's kind of like light-hearted little banter, but he's kind of like the father figure to Rowan in a way. And then Lucius is who's not modeled in this game, but basically he's in a tent, and basically there's a lot of funny back and forth banter between him and Sequanus and Lucius, so it's kind of he's kind of like the comic relief, really.
So we got Roman, Sequanus, and Lucius. Am I saying them properly?
Yes, you are.
Okay, there they are. Already into the lore, already grasped. In terms of what we are actually seeing on the screen, we are seeing HP, and it's not something that I would say, at least from my short experience with dislikes of this genre of games, I haven't seen that in the likes of the Last of Us, I don't think.
Yes. Sorry, go.
Yeah, sorry. I think you have that more of a RPG feel, definitely, especially with the combat that we are seeing on screen right now.
Yeah, so the three kind of like core aspects are the narrative, the dialogue system that we've created, and the combat system. So you kind of go between talking to characters, exploration, and combat. Is the plan for Project Roman. So those are kind of the core tenets. Because we feel like in games like The Last of Us and Uncharted is kind of like more of a, you kind of talk to a character, explore combat, and that kind of works really well. So the plan is to kind of expand on that and make it like a bigger game, kind of a bigger scope for the game. But yeah, so the narrative is kind of like the most important part of the game, I'd say.
I see. That's awesome. Well, so you would definitely be looking to get the audience of the lore focused games sort of attracted to your game as well, right?
Yeah. So kind of the audience that we're looking for are people who are into kind of single player narrative, like action adventure games. So we're kind of targeting maybe sort of the action fans for Uncharted, maybe like games like The Witcher, where there's a lot of lore in that game and there's a lot to explore. So that's kind of like the audience that we're going for with this game.
I see. Cool. What would you change? Not in terms of your scope, but in terms of what you managed to produce, which is amazing. Kudos to you. What's the one thing you would personally change if you could sort of go back, and do it over again?
I think we would probably change the way we probably change the way we kind of went about things because we had a few problems early in development, and I think we could have handled those challenges a bit differently. Like for example, one of the characters isn't rigged, and we just didn't have time. And I think if we'd spent that time a little bit better, if the time management was a bit better, then I think we could have polished out a few of the mechanics. I think time management for us was one of the key learning points for this project.
He's right though.
I see. So,
Yes,
has the
he said,
development
"Don't
plan
top me
changed
Say
since
how
you
far.
enrolled onto Transfuser and decided to participate in ProtoPlay? Or has it always been the same?
No, it changed massively around 25% into development, where we realized because we were going to create an open world RPG, we realized we didn't have the time nor the budget to kind of do that. So we decided about quarter way through development that we'd change the idea to become more linear and more narrative focused, which was good because it managed to focus the project in a lot better. We became a lot more focused on creating the project. So there was a huge change about quarter of the way through, but it was an important change because we realised early
Is
on that
anyone
the scope
arrow
was just
here?
far too large for what we were trying to do.
I'm just from personal perspective, it almost seems like when we start the games, we are daydreaming of this huge project, right? But when we're
Yeah.
actually requested to finish it in a certain period of time, we realize what actually needs to be done, what can we make, what we
Yeah.
cannot make, you know?
Yeah.
So there it is. I guess maybe a tip to some upcoming indie devs. Scope
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a great learning experience because we kind of realized, and it's also a lot of us this was all new to us. So like, for example, I created the dialogue system and that was completely new to me. And because we were creating an open world game, our focus was on creating expandable tools. So for example, the dialogue system I created, I was going to create the dialogue system and then multiple people were going to input dialogue into that system. So I had to kind of make it really accessible to begin with, before, giving it off to somebody else because they needed to be able to use those tools. So I think that was a great learning experience, and other members of the team kind of took on different roles, which they kind of like. There's a great term using, putting on different hats. So some of the team who were designers may have done some artwork, for example. One of the designers was also a rigger as well, so they had a chance at experimenting with rigging. So it was kind of like we were all putting on different hats, which was actually really great because it let us expand our skills a lot further than we would have been able to before.
I see. What would you say? You mentioned a lot of input right there. What would you say then was your largest influence on decision making?
I think we had a lot of group discussions, so I think it was very democratic the way that we did everything. I think, and that was really important. So decisions were made, like major decisions for the games were made between all of us, which I think made it a lot better in the long run because everyone kind of had an input. So if there was a problem, multiple people would be able to talk to each other about it instead of having one person having a vision. And then, if somebody didn't agree, then, we wouldn't be able to talk about it. But because everyone kind of had input, it was great for the project because everyone was able to help each other.
I see. Yeah, that's great. Sounds like a very healthy working experience for the project.
Yeah. No, it was amazing. Everyone worked really well in the team.
We pretty much just covered the genre and the audience to almost to a full extent. Anything you want to touch on in terms of genre and the target market you're aiming? Maybe you could tell us how you are trying to tailor your game to meet your target market.
I think we kind of want to make a slower pace game. We don't want to make it high action because when we were looking at the inspirations for especially things like the combat system, we had to kind of steer away from kind of maybe the Monster Hunter Worlds kind of combat. We had to kind of like scale it down to, because we were going for like a realistic kind of game, we couldn't have like high action sort of combat, for example. So meant that because we were creating a realistic game, it meant that we had to make all of our systems realistic, which was like an important aspect. Like for example, the deer that's on the screen right now, we had to like make that realistic. So when it spotted the player would run away in a naturalistic way, it wouldn't just stay there, or wouldn't come up to the player, because those were some issues that we had to begin with, which like the deer would run and it would just kind of break immersion. So that was kind of really important for us.
It's just like a deer in the headlights,
Yeah.
But you, of course, don't want the deer to react like the player is a car, so I'm glad you got that fixed. Speaking of the deer mechanic and how you mentioned that it's something you had to fix, did you have feedback from the players perhaps on these sort of things that needed fixing?
Yeah, because this was a university project as well, it was important that we were kind of recording all the feedback. So, for example, I had a lot of feedback about the deer because we do have a bow and arrow mechanic, which isn't in this video, but we had to make everything feel right. So I had quite a lot of feedback for the dialogue system saying, oh, this option doesn't feel like I'm selecting it properly. So, it's just put a little hover on the dialogue option. So it would like appear gold, for example. Those were small little things that were quite important to the project overall, because you can't get any work done without having really good feedback. So the feedback process was important throughout.
I see. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
sounds good. sounds like you got the hold of it and you kept it very much organized, like you mentioned, keeping the record of all the feedback.
Yeah, we kind of did that. Google Docs was really great for that because they have like a little form. So we just kind of like send the build off to people and we get them to play it. Or if I'd get people to sit down and just have a look at the game and like kind of like force them to play it and just give me feedback on the system. So, which is probably the best way of doing it, really. So, and we were quite honest with them. We said be as brutal as possible because you don't want people being nice and giving you kind of like false feedback with things. So it was important that we got kind of realistic feedback. If something didn't work, then it was important that we understood why it didn't work or if it needed to be taken out.
Absolutely.
So that was an important aspect to us. So we didn't want people being nice. We wanted people being honest.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. You want to know what's wrong and you don't want to know what's kind of okay. You need to know what needs to be fixed. Because that's how you improve the game, and you want to improve the game essentially. So
yeah,
definitely having honest feedback is extremely important. So very much agree on that. What's your ambition for the game? Because it's a very ambitious project.
Yeah. So
what's your plan? What's Transfuser and the ProtoPlay?
So we aren't going to continue with Project Roman for now, only because the scope is too large for the team that we have. So we're not scrapping it. We're going to actually continue working on it in the background. But the fine logic as a studio, we're going to work on smaller games. So, for example, last year for EGX, we made a game called Scientific Shutdown. So we're going to continue to work on that because it's almost finished. And hopefully, once we get publisher funding, or if we get some more funding from this smaller projects, then we can fund Project Roman, so we can kind of expand that in the future, or even just doing freelance work, working with other studios. That's kind of the path that we're heading towards, only because we've kind of realized Project Roman is a huge undertaking at the moment in terms of scope. So what we're currently doing is we're going to work on smaller projects so we can fund this much larger project. But we're going to continue to work on this in a kind of a small scale.
I see. Yeah, I mean, with the large projects you always have to, especially as small studios, you have to focus on how to keep the studio afloat per se, which is absolutely understandable. But it would be great to see the game further developed. And if any of our viewers want to see this game further developed, make sure to type that ! Define Logic Studios and grab their social links. Go follow them to see their other game as well. Who knows? Maybe that will be of interest to you guys.
We'll send. Sorry, we'll send a link of the trailer for the other game in the chat as well, so people can see what that project's about.
Wonderful. There you go. I mean, we know where we can follow you. Is there anything else you want to add on the project?
I think that's it. We had we had quite a lot of fun making the game. There was a lot of a lot of discussion around how things should be done.
There's only one arrow
Um,
here.
I personally for me this was a great project to work on because this was kind of my first because we made the game in Unreal 4, which was a great game engine. So this is kind of my first year working with Unreal, which was amazing. So it got me learning quite a lot. And also, it was really great for the team because we all managed to work really well together. So it was great kind of collaboration. And it's great because we can even if this game isn't working currently for us right now, we can still work on it in the future. And under Define Logic, we can continue that, which is absolutely amazing.
I see. Yeah, that's awesome. In terms of visuals of the game, would you be looking into keeping it realistic as it seems right now, or would you want to stylize the game?
We're going to keep it realistic because our artists prefer a realistic art style. That's kind of their bread and butter. So at the moment, we're going to keep it a realistic art style, and also because we want to create like immersive game. That's kind of the plan for it, is to go with a realistic art style because it's a lot easier to immerse the player if it's
if you need to fix the tempo,
that kind of art style.
What? No, I'll be coming with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I got you.
No,
I got you.
We'll be going together.
I mean, the game definitely has the potential. It's always the case with the large scope games that
Yeah, but if you need to stay
it would be
here,
amazing
it'll
to
be
see that
fine.
final product, that idea come to life. So I hope you'll manage to touch on Project Roman from time to time. Also, I was seeing a lot of questions and speculations on the For Honor inspiration of the combat. Could you talk to me more about the combat? Because I'm actually pretty interested in how does it exactly work?
Yeah, so I didn't create the combat system, but our designer George created the combat system, and he spent a lot of time kind of crafting it. So you could attack left, right, up, so similar to the For Honor system, and then you can block left, right, and up. So basically, at the moment, the UI isn't finished, so it's a kind of a red sword for attack and a blue sword for defending, and a kind of a white sword other direction that you'll be facing. And we wanted to make the animations for the enemy as kind of clear as possible, so they know which kind of direction that the player is attacking. And that was something important because to begin with, this was what the feedback that we got was you didn't actually know whether the enemy was attacking left, right, or up. So it's kind of important that feedback is given within the combat. And George was continually working on it, so to get it working, as best as possible. And it works really well at the moment. So I was working with George on having the enemy kind of chase the player around and move in random directions, so it makes the combat a little bit more fluid. So everything kind of blends in together. And then similar to a game like Dark Souls, you have kind of a health bar which will kind of like deplete as you kind of the more and more hits you get on the character. So yeah, it's very, very similar to For Honor. That's kind of like the main inspiration for the combat system.
I see. That's awesome. Is there? I'm not sure if you mentioned that, but is there inventory in the game?
Yes, it was going to be inventory.
Okay.
For the ProtoPlay demo, we kind of stripped it out because we didn't have time to implement it. But you'd be able to. There was going to be something in the narrative for you to craft arrows to kill the deer. So basically, you'd be able to find a flint and wood and other kind of materials to gather, and you'd be able to actually craft those into, arrows, or you'd be able to craft a bow, or if you later on in the story, you'd be able to craft a sword, for example. But you kind of carry those materials into your inventory, so it has that like more RPG type element in the game.
I see.
Sorry, go on.
I'm just thinking. You're mentioning RPG a lot. I'm just. Have you considered taking leaning more into a fantasy route? Wizards, fireballs, sort of thing.
I think for now, I think we do have kind of a fancy element with the mythology side.
I see.
I think if we're going to add the fantasy in, I think we'd go towards the kind of the Welsh mythology route, because it's kind of very much in Welsh culture that there's a lot of mythology around. so I think if we were ever to do that, I think we were going to go kind of like down the Welsh mythology and just kind of explore that a bit further, because I think that's a really interesting topic.
Yeah, sounds cool. So, and you also, if you were to be doing that, you will also be giving exposure to that Welsh culture, even though it's mythology, it's still part of that culture, right? So that would fit into the goal of your game, I guess, which is great, right?
Yeah, that'd be. We were going to finish off this ProtoPlay demo with a kind of a Welsh mythology theme with the Deer of Anon coming out, and it would kind of like change the time of day and kind of have like some more visual effects. So we kind of explore that a bit further, and that was kind of like so the player can have like kind of different parts of the narrative. So it's not just a linear game where you're just talking to characters. There's actually a bit something interesting in the way that the game is presented. So it'd be quite cool visual effects, and that's kind of the plan for the future.
I see. Awesome. I think we're gonna start finishing off here. Anything else you would like to say to our amazing viewers about your game or your team?
Yeah, everyone's been great on the team. Please follow us at our links. I think it's at Defined Logic USW on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. And yeah, thank you for checking out the game, and thank you for having us as well.
Absolutely. There are the links, guys. Make sure to follow. And thank you so much for chatting to me. It was a pleasure, Jamie.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are gonna be back on with the next game in around 10 minutes. So don't go anywhere, or if you need to go anywhere, go make some popcorn and come right back. See you guys very soon.